It was an old dress, Claire. Your mother isn't here to complain about it. Those were the first words I heard when I walked into my house and found my cousin Madison standing in the living room with my mother's wedding gown hanging from one arm. Black glitter clung to the ivory lace. Purple stains spread across the skirt. One sleeve had been torn almost completely from the shoulder, and the train dragged behind her. As if someone had stomped on a letter my mother had written to me. For several seconds, I didn't make a sound. Madison's mascara had run into gray shadows beneath her eyes. Her phone trembled in her hand, its screen still open to an Instagram story from the night before. In the frozen frame, she was dancing on a rooftop in uptown Charlotte, wearing the dress like a costume. A man in a black cowboy hat was pulling the veil over her face while a ring of people laughed and raised champagne glasses. My fiancé, Ethan, came in behind me carrying a box of apple cider donuts we had bought on the drive home from Asheville. He saw the dress, saw my face, and the box slipped from his hands. The cardboard struck the hardwood floor. Cinnamon sugar scattered around his shoes. "Claire," he whispered. I couldn't move. The gown had never been valuable in the way insurance companies understand value. It didn't have a famous label. It had been made in 1993 at my grandmother's kitchen table by two women who measured wealth in saved buttons and meals stretched an extra day. But it was the last thing of my mother's that grief had not touched. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 29 years old then, a freelance graphic designer living in the brick bungalow where my mother had raised me in Charlotte, North Carolina. My mother, Evelyn, had died 3 years earlier from a cerebral aneurysm no one saw coming. She was 52. She had a loud laugh, narrow hands made strong by years of sewing, and a habit of singing Patsy Cline songs while she ironed. The morning she died, she had texted me a picture of a crooked tomato from her garden. By lunch, she was in an ambulance. By sunset, I was sitting beneath fluorescent hospital lights while a neurologist used words like catastrophic and irreversible. I remember staring at his striped tie because looking at his face made the truth too real. Afterward, people filled our house with casseroles, grocery store flowers, and sentences that sounded polished from overuse. Everything happens for a reason. God needed another angel. At least she didn't suffer long. I learned that comfort can become cruelty when it asks a grieving person to make tragedy easier for everyone else. Sometimes there is no reason. Sometimes the person who taught you how to breathe calmly is simply gone, and every room in your life has less oxygen. Mom left me the house in Plaza Midwood, a tin recipe box, 2 mason jars filled with buttons, her old Singer sewing machine, and the wedding gown. She had sewn it with her mother, my grandmother Ruth, during evenings after work. It had a high lace collar, tiny covered buttons down the back, and a blue forget-me-not embroidered inside the hem. When I was little, I would slip my fingers beneath the muslin garment bag and tell her I would wear it when I got married. She always smiled as if she knew something I didn't. "Then we'll keep it safe like treasure," she would say. She did. So did I. The gown stayed in a sealed preservation box on the top shelf of the locked storage closet beside the garage. I checked it every few months. I replaced the acid-free tissue. I kept a cedar block nearby, never touching the fabric. When Ethan proposed, I carried the box upstairs, set it on my bed, and opened it for the first time since Mom's funeral. Ethan sat beside me while I cried into the skirt. I told him I wasn't sure the gown would fit. My mother had been smaller through the shoulders, and the high neck felt too formal for the October garden ceremony we were planning. But I wanted a textile conservator to help me preserve as much as possible. Maybe the bodice could be altered. Maybe the lace could become an overlay. I wasn't trying to become my mother. I just wanted something her hands had touched to move with. Me when I walked toward the rest of my life. Madison knew all of that. She had been in the room the day I opened the box. She watched me trace the blue flower hidden inside the hem. She hugged me and said, "Aunt Evelyn will be right there with you." At the time, the words felt tender. Later, remembering them made me nauseated. Madison was 24, the only daughter of my mother's younger sister, Denise. A year before the dress was destroyed, Aunt Denise had called and asked if Madison could stay with me. She said her daughter needed structure. Madison had dropped out of a marketing program in Memphis, bounced between retail jobs, and fallen in with friends who treated every night like content. Denise thought living with me would help her mature. I should have said no. Instead, I heard my mother's voice reminding me that family opens the door. I cleared out the small back bedroom. I helped Madison build a resume. I let her borrow my car when hers was in the shop. When she said she wanted to open a vintage boutique, I designed a logo for free. She paid no rent for the first 6 months, then contributed $300 when she remembered. Lipstick-marked glasses appeared on every flat surface. Wet towels stayed on the bathroom floor. Packages arrived daily even when she said she was broke. I made excuses because making excuses was easier than admitting I had confused generosity with the absence of boundaries. The weekend everything happened. Ethan and I drove to Asheville to tour a small orchard venue in the Blue Ridge foothills. We left Saturday morning and planned to return late Sunday. Madison told me she had a closing shift at the boutique where she worked and would probably spend Sunday doing laundry. At 2:13 Saturday afternoon, she texted me a picture of our orange tabby, Juniper, asleep in a laundry basket. "Wild weekend at home," she wrote. I sent back a laughing emoji. That small lie would bother me almost as much as the dress. She had created an alibi for a crime no one had accused her of yet. On Sunday evening, Ethan and I pulled into the driveway just after 7 o'clock. Every downstairs light was on, but the house was silent. Melted ice floated in plastic cups on the dining table. The air smelled of cheap floral perfume, hairspray, and smoke from a sparkler. "Madison?" I called. No answer. Then I saw the gown. It lay across the living room sofa without its muslin bag. A deep violet drink stain soaked the front of the skirt. Black body glitter had worked into the lace. There was a burn near the edge of the train. A hard brown crescent where synthetic netting had melted. The right sleeve hung by several threads. The veil had been cut in a jagged line, and the pearls my grandmother had sewn on one at a time were scattered across the floor. I lifted the bodice with both hands. My knees folded. Ethan caught my elbow before I hit the coffee table. Madison came out of the downstairs bathroom wearing a satin robe. "I can fix it," she said. "What did you do?" "It was a theme party." "You wore my mother's wedding dress?" "Only for a little while." "Did you cut the veil?" "It got caught on something." "And the stains?" "I didn't know body paint wouldn't wash out." Ethan stayed close without touching me. He understood that kindness, in that instant, would split me open. "Claire, breathe," he said softly. I looked at Madison. "You knew." She rolled her eyes, but tears had already started to gather. They weren't the tears of someone who understood harm. They were the tears of someone preparing a defense. "I didn't think you'd react like this." "It's clothing, Claire." "Clothing?" The word landed harder than if she had slapped me. "It was Mom's." Madison began crying louder. "They invited me at the last minute. The theme was, 'Till Death Do Us Party.' The dress looked vintage, and Tyler was going to be there. I wanted to look good. I wasn't thinking." My phone vibrated. Aunt Denise. Then my uncle. Then a cousin in Raleigh I hadn't spoken to in 8 months. Within 15 minutes, the family group chat had transformed what happened into a story about me threatening to make Madison homeless over an accident. Madison had called her mother before I even walked through the door. What she had not mentioned was the video. One of her friends had posted a clip of Madison twirling beneath patio lights while someone sprayed her with black glitter. A sparkler burned inches from the train. When a woman behind the camera asked whose dress it was, Madison laughed. "It belonged to my dead aunt, but Claire cries over everything. She'll never know." The people around her howled. I screen recorded the story. Before it disappeared. Then I looked at my cousin with a calmness that frightened me. "You have 30 minutes to pack what you need for tonight." Her mouth fell open. "You're kicking me out?" "Yes." "Over an old dress?" For one terrible second, it felt as if my mother had died again in my living room, except this time everyone was asking me not to make noise about it. Madison ran upstairs sobbing so loudly that a stranger might have assumed I had harmed her. Ethan picked up the fallen pearls without telling me to calm down. One by one, he placed them in the lid of the preservation box. 20 minutes later, Aunt Denise arrived without knocking. She carried an overnight bag and wore the expression of someone coming to extinguish a fire without asking who had lit it. "Claire, you cannot put your cousin on the street over a material object." I held up the torn veil. "Is this a material object?" She looked at it for less than a second. "I understand that it hurts, but Madison is young. She's 24. She made a mistake." "No." She unlocked the storage closet, climbed a step stool, opened a sealed box, removed a protected garment, put it on, and took it to a rooftop party. Madison came down with a backpack, crying. I thought she wouldn't find out. The room went still. Aunt Denise turned slowly. "What did you say?" Madison covered her mouth, but the sentence could not be returned to her. I opened the video on my phone and pressed play. Her voice filled the living room. "It belonged to my dead aunt, but Claire cries over everything." Denise's face lost color. "That was taken out of context," she said. "What context makes mocking a dead woman acceptable?" Ethan asked. No one answered. Grandma Ruth arrived 10 minutes later leaning on her maple cane. She was 82 and had the kind of gaze that could cut thread without scissors. Denise must have called her expecting backup. Instead, Grandma saw the dress on the sofa and pressed a hand to her chest. "I sewed that lace," she said. For the first time, Madison stopped crying and stared at the floor. Denise reached for Grandma's arm. "Mom, it was a foolish thing." "She didn't mean," Grandma pulled away. "A foolish thing is losing a house key." This took a lack of soul. Something in the room changed. Madison tried to defend herself. She said the gown had been stored away, that I wasn't using it, that it might not even fit me, and that no one knew if Ethan and I would actually go through with the wedding. Each sentence made the next one uglier. "Stop talking," Grandma said. "You've destroyed enough." I told Madison she could take her backpack that night. Ethan and I would pack the rest of her belongings and leave the boxes for pickup the next afternoon. Denise accused me of tearing the family apart. Ethan spoke before I could. "The family split the moment you decided Madison's embarrassment mattered more than Claire's grief." Denise pointed at me. "Your mother would hate seeing you act this way." Heat climbed into my throat. "Do not use my mother as a shield for your daughter." Madison walked out with Aunt Denise. Just before the door closed, she turned and said, "You're going to end up alone because of a piece of fabric." I held the torn muslin bag against my chest. I would rather be alone than surrounded by people who call my mother a piece of fabric. The door shut. My hands began to shake. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I carried the gown to a textile conservation studio in Noda called Still Thread. The owner, Marisol Vega, met me at a long white table beneath bright inspection lamps. She was in her early 40s, with round glasses, silver beginning at her temples, and the careful movements of someone who understood that objects can be wounded. Ethan placed the preservation box on the table. I couldn't bring myself to open it, so Marisol did. She didn't gasp. She didn't offer false hope. She put on cotton gloves and examined every inch while I stood with my arms wrapped around myself. She tested the purple stain with a damp swab. She lifted the burned train toward the light. She counted missing buttons and laid the torn sleeve flat. "The entire gown cannot be saved," she said at last. I gripped the back of a chair. "None of it?" "That isn't what I said." Her voice stayed gentle. "The collar is stable. 14 of the covered buttons are intact. Most of the blue embroidery survived, and parts of the veil can be cleaned. The silk underlayer is badly stained, but sections of the lace may be usable. We can preserve those pieces in a new dress, or make something smaller that you can carry close to your heart." I started crying in front of a woman I had known for 20 minutes. She handed me a box of tissues and waited. She did not tell me to forgive. She did not tell me my mother lived inside me and therefore the gown should not matter. She gave me the truth carefully, which was the first form of respect anyone outside Ethan and Grandma had offered me. Marisol photographed the damage for her records. She also gave me a preliminary estimate, $4,800 for conservation, construction, and months of specialized handwork. I had saved for the wedding, but not for a catastrophe. Ethan told her to begin stabilization while we decided what to do. "We'll figure out the money," he said when we reached the parking lot. "I don't want our wedding to become a rescue operation." "It already is. We're rescuing what matters." I looked at him. "You don't have to pay for something my family destroyed." "I'm not paying for your family. I'm building a life with you." That afternoon, I posted 3 images on Facebook and Instagram. The first was a photograph of Mom wearing the gown on her wedding day, standing outside a courthouse with Grandma Ruth beside her. The second showed the damage on Marisol's table. The third was a still from the rooftop video. I wrote, "This was not a costume. It was one of the few physical pieces of my mother I had left. The person who took it knew exactly what it meant and believed I would never find out. My home will no longer shelter anyone who treats my grief as entertainment." I did not tag Madison. I did not name her workplace. I did not ask strangers to attack her. It did not matter. People recognized her. The family scandal exploded before dinner. A cousin called me vindictive. An uncle wrote that dead people do not come back because of dresses. One aunt said weddings should unite families, not divide them. Denise sent me 14 messages demanding I delete the post because Madison was having a panic attack. Not one message from Denise said, "I'm sorry for what happened to Evelyn's dress." Not one said, "Your pain matters." Everything was about returning Madison to comfort. Then the messages from strangers began. Some were cruel toward Madison in ways I did not endorse. Others came from women who had lost mothers, sisters, babies, homes, or keepsakes. A woman in Oregon wrote that her brother had thrown away their father's medals because they were taking up space. A man in Ohio said his family mocked him for keeping his wife's last voicemail. Their stories reminded me that the gown was both singular and not singular at all. People often call something just an object when respecting it would require them to acknowledge someone else's pain. At 9:17 that night, a direct message appeared from a woman named Kayla, one of Madison's rooftop friends. "I'm sorry," it began. "There's another video you should see." The clip started in the parking garage beneath the apartment tower. Madison stood beside Kayla's car, pulling the gown from a black garment bag. The dress was still clean, the sleeve attached, the veil uncut. Someone behind the camera asked, "Is that actually your aunt's?" "Yeah," Madison said. "My cousin keeps it locked up like the crown jewels." "Does she know you have it?" Madison smiled directly at the phone. "If Claire loved it that much, she wouldn't keep it in a garage closet. Besides, she'll be gone until tomorrow. What if you ruin it?" Madison adjusted the high collar. "Then I'll say it was already fragile." The video lasted 19 seconds. There are discoveries that make you cry, and discoveries that make you cold. I watched it 4 times without blinking. Madison had not grabbed the gown impulsively on her way out. She had thought about the lock, my schedule, and the explanation she would use if the fabric tore. Her text about Juniper. Asleep in the laundry basket was no longer careless dishonesty. It was part of the plan. I saved the file in 3 places. Ethan watched it once and walked into the kitchen. I heard him open a cabinet, then close it harder than necessary. "She planned the excuse before she left," he said. "Yes. Are you going to post this too?" I looked at the screen. "I don't know." He sat across from me. "Whatever you do, make sure it protects you. Don't let proving who she is turn you into someone who spends every day watching her." That was one of Ethan's gifts. He never confused restraint with surrender. The next morning, I checked the security camera in the garage. Ethan had installed it months earlier after someone stole a bicycle from our carport. I had forgotten it covered the side door and most of the storage closet. At 6:42 Saturday evening, Madison entered the frame wearing jeans and a black tank top. She looked directly at the camera, then reached behind a stack of paint cans and removed the small brass key to the closet. I stopped the video. The key was supposed to be in the locked drawer of my desk. I replayed the footage. Madison opened the closet, pulled down the white box, and carried it to the garage workbench. She used a kitchen knife to cut the preservation tape. Then she lifted the gown, held it against her body, and admired herself in the dark reflection of the window. At 6:47, she took a picture and sent it to someone. At 6:51, she packed the gown into a cheap black garment bag. At 6:54, she returned the brass key behind the paint cans. I called Ethan into the room. "I never put that key there," I said. He watched the footage. "Who else knew where it was?" "No one. It was in my desk when we left." He frowned. "Did Madison know about the drawer?" "Maybe. But why return the key to the garage instead of my office?" The answer arrived at noon, inside another message from Aunt Denise. "I know you're angry," she wrote, "but I only told Madison where the spare key was because she said she needed your old sewing supplies for a display. I had no idea she planned to take the dress. Please don't twist this into something it isn't." I read the message twice. There had never been a spare key behind the paint cans. Denise had apparently taken the key from my desk during a family dinner 2 weeks earlier, or Madison had given it to her to hide. Either way, my aunt had helped create access to a locked space in my home and had kept it from me. I called her. "When did you move the key?" I asked. She hesitated. "I didn't move anything. Your text says you told Madison where the spare was." That's what she called it. There was no spare. Silence. "Denise, did you take the key from my desk? You're making this sound criminal." "I'm asking a question." "Madison wanted to borrow some of Evelyn's vintage notions for a boutique display. I knew you would say no because you've become possessive about everything in that house." My skin prickled. "So you took my key?" "I moved it somewhere she could access it. I assumed she would return what she borrowed." "You helped your daughter break into a locked closet in my home." "Don't be dramatic. It's a family house." "It is my house. Only because Evelyn left it to you." The resentment inside that sentence was older than Madison's stay with me. I suddenly remembered small things Denise had said after Mom died. That the house had appreciated more than expected, that it was lucky I did not have siblings, that Mom's sewing machine should have gone to someone who would actually use it. I had heard those comments as grief and envy. Now they sounded like permission she had been granting herself for years. "You knew the dress was in that box," I said. "Of course I knew. I watched Mom and Evelyn make it." "And you still gave Madison access." "I did not tell her to wear it." "You taught her that what belonged to me was available if she wanted it badly enough." Denise's voice hardened. "Delete that post, Claire. Madison lost her job this morning." "Why?" "Her manager said the attention was bad for the boutique." "Did she wear stolen inventory to parties too? How can you be so cruel?" I almost laughed. "Instead," I said, "do not contact me unless it is about arranging pickup of her belongings or paying for the restoration." "Paying? You cannot be serious." "The preliminary estimate is $4,800. We don't have that kind of money." "Then you should not have helped her access something she could not replace." I ended the call. For the first time in my life, hanging up on a relative did not feel rude. It felt like locking a door. The following day, Denise and Madison arrived to collect the Boxes Ethan and I had packed. Grandma Ruth came because she said she did not want me alone. Madison wore sunglasses even though the sky was cloudy. Denise walked into the living room as if she still owned the right to enter without permission. I had placed my laptop on the dining table. Before you take the boxes, you both need to see something, I said. I played the garage video. Madison went rigid when she saw herself. Remove the key. You didn't know the camera covered that door, did you? I asked. She pushed her sunglasses onto her head. Her eyes were dry. You're going to make everyone hate me. No. I am letting people see what you did when you believed no one was watching. Then I played the parking garage clip. When Madison heard herself say she would claim the gown was already fragile, her face changed. The performance collapsed. She looked angry, not ashamed. Kayla sent you that? That is what concerns you. She promised she deleted it. Grandma Ruth closed her eyes. Denise stared at her daughter as if some part of the story had finally escaped her control. You told me it ripped because someone stepped on it, Denise said. Madison crossed her arms. Someone did. You planned to blame the condition of the dress before you even got there. Why are you taking her side now? Denise flinched. I showed them the restoration estimate and a written list of damaged property. The gown itself was irreplaceable, but the conservation work had a real cost. I told them I would accept a payment plan. If they refused, I would consult an attorney about a civil claim. Denise stared at the number. You would sue family? Would you ask that if Madison had wrecked my car? A car has value. Grandma struck the rubber tip of her cane against the floor. So did Evelyn's work. Denise looked away. Madison carried the first box toward the door. Grandma stopped her and placed another on top. Take these, she said. And neither of you will ask Claire to carry guilt that belongs to you. Outside, Madison shoved the boxes into Denise's SUV. Before getting in, she turned toward the porch. You're enjoying this, she said. You finally get to be the victim everyone protects. I held the damaged garment bag against my chest. There is nothing enjoyable about learning how little you respected me. She slammed the car door. After they left, Grandma sat at my kitchen table while Ethan made coffee. Her hands shook around the mug. I should have stopped Denise from talking about that house the way she did, she said. You didn't know about the key. No, but I knew she carried a grievance against your mother. He sat beside her. What grievance? Grandma stared into the coffee. When your grandfather died, he left the sewing machine to Evelyn because she was the one who worked with me. Denise believed it meant we loved her less. Then Evelyn bought this house before Denise could afford one. Every blessing your mother received became, in Denise's mind, something taken from her. Why didn't Mom tell me? Because she spent her life protecting her little sister from the consequences of jealousy. Grandma looked at me. Do not inherit that job. The sentence followed me for months. I changed the locks that afternoon. I removed Madison from the streaming accounts, the family phone plan, and the emergency contact list at my doctor's office. I gave the security company a new code. I sent Denise a certified letter stating that neither she nor Madison had permission to enter the property. Each boundary made me feel guilty for about 5 minutes. Then it made me feel safe. The family group chat became a courtroom where no one had asked for evidence. People accused me of humiliating Madison publicly, ignoring that she had made the humiliation public herself. They said I cared more about a wedding than a cousin. They said Mom would want peace. I left the chat. 2 days later, Grandma left it too. Then, one by one, 3 cousins messaged me privately to say they understood but did not want to get involved. That phrase used to comfort me. Now I heard what it meant. They wanted the benefits of knowing the truth without the cost of standing beside it. The only relative who acted was Uncle Raymond, Denise's husband. He called from the cab of his delivery truck and apologized without qualification. I didn't know about the key or the video, he said. Denise told me it was an accident. I'm not asking you to forgive anybody. I want the invoice. You don't have to pay for them. I'm not paying it all. Madison needs to. But I'm making the first payment because the work should start. The next day, $800 arrived by bank transfer. It was the first acknowledgement from that household that damage was not erased by discomfort. Madison did not thank him. Denise accused him of betraying their daughter. Their marriage, I later learned, had already been strained by years of Denise rescuing Madison from consequences. The dress did not create those cracks. It showed everyone where they were. 15 days after I left the gown with Marisol, she called me back to the studio. Ethan came with me. On the table beneath white cotton sheets were small miracles, the clean lace collar, 14 covered buttons, a section of blue embroidery, and a length of veil that still carried the faintest scent of lavender soap. It was not the whole dress. It would never be the whole dress again. But it was not trash. We can create a new gown, Marisol said. The surviving pieces can be integrated inside and along the back. Not to hide the damage, but so the history walks with you. Ethan took my hand. Your mom isn't only in fabric, he said. But I understand that the fabric was a doorway. That made me cry harder than any perfect speech could have. I told Marisol yes. The work took place over the next 7 months. At first, I imagined restoration as a quiet process, a needle entering cloth, a stain fading, an old thing becoming whole. I learned that real restoration is more honest. It begins with accepting what cannot be recovered. Marisol removed damaged fibers one at a time. She stabilized the remaining lace with nearly invisible net. She tested 6 cleaning solutions before finding one that softened the purple stain without weakening the silk. Some pieces disintegrated when touched. Others survived with a stubbornness that felt almost human. Every other Thursday, I visited the studio after work. Marisol invited me to help make decisions. We chose a new matte silk in warm ivory instead of trying to match the yellowed original exactly. The neckline would be lower and simpler, but the old collar would form a hidden border inside it. The original buttons would close the back. The blue embroidery would rest beneath the inner layer over my heart. She planned to use the recovered pearls in a small crescent at the waist, visible only when light struck from the side. It will not look like your mother's gown, she warned. I don't want a copy, I said. I want a continuation. She smiled. That is what conservation should be. While the gown changed, so did my wedding plans. Ethan and I gave up the Asheville orchard because the restoration costs and travel no longer made sense. We booked a small glass chapel in Belmont, 20 minutes from home, with space for 46 people. We cut the floral budget in half. I designed the invitations myself. Ethan's sister offered to make the cake. The smaller wedding felt less like a compromise every week. We stopped planning for people who believed an invitation was a birthright. Our guest list became a record of who had shown up when our life was inconvenient. Grandma Ruth would sit in the front row. Uncle Raymond was invited, though he said he understood if his presence complicated things. Denise and Madison were not. That decision created a fresh wave of outrage. Denise called from a number I did not recognize. You're really excluding your aunt and cousin from the wedding? You're not excluded. You're not invited. That is the same thing. No. Exclusion suggests you belonged. There automatically. Evelyn would be ashamed. I closed my eyes. Even after everything, she reached for my mother like a tool. If you use mom's name to pressure me again, I will end the call. I am her sister. I knew her longer than you did. Then you should know how she felt about that dress. Denise changed tactics. She told me Madison was depressed, that she had lost friends, that Tyler stopped returning her calls, and that no boutique in Charlotte would hire her. She said my post followed Madison everywhere. I did not make the video, I said. I did not make her laugh. I did not make her plan the lie. But you could make it go away. No, I could hide it. Those are different things. Be the bigger person. That phrase had become a warning siren. In my family, be the bigger person always meant accept the smaller share of dignity. I was the bigger person when I housed her for a year, I said. I was the bigger person when I helped her apply for jobs, lent her my car, and paid her expenses. Being bigger did not teach her gratitude. It taught her that I had no edge. Denise was quiet. The restoration invoice still has a $3,200 balance, I continued. Madison has made no payment. She has no job. She has been posting weekend trips. Her friends paid. Then she can arrange $50 a month. Denise said I was obsessed with punishment and hung up. I filed a claim in small claims court 3 weeks later. I did not do it because I believed money could replace the gown. I did it because every attempt to resolve the cost privately had been treated as optional. The filing asked for the unpaid conservation expenses and court fees, supported by Marisol's report. The videos, the camera footage, and the text in which Denise admitted giving Madison access to the key. Serving the claim ended the family fantasy that I would eventually become tired enough to surrender. Madison posted a long statement saying she was being sued by a relative for healing incorrectly after a misunderstanding. She never described what she had done. Denise shared it with a caption about cancel culture. For 2 days, strangers debated whether I was heartless. Then Kayla released the entire parking garage video on her own account. The part Madison had not expected the public to hear was her saying she would pretend the gown had already been fragile. The statement disappeared within an hour. That was the first twist the family could no longer soften. The second came during mediation at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Madison arrived with Denise and a volunteer legal advisor. I came with Ethan, though he waited outside, and a folder arranged by date. The mediator was a gray-haired woman who spoke in the calm voice of someone accustomed to people confusing emotion with evidence. Madison claimed she had believed I was no longer planning to wear the gown. I showed the text I had sent her 9 days before the party, a photograph of 3 restoration. Studios and the message, which one do you think Mom would have liked? Madison had replied, the second one feels special. She claimed the damage was accidental. I played the clip in which she predicted using fragility as an excuse. Then Denise claimed she had only told Madison about a spare key, not moved one. The mediator asked, "Where did you learn there was a key behind the paint cans?" Denise looked at Madison. Madison looked at the table. "My sister used to keep one there," Denise said. "My mother never stored a key there," I replied. "The lock was installed after she died." The room went silent. The mediator repeated the question. Finally, Madison whispered, "Mom took it." Denise's head snapped toward her. "You told me to say it was a spare," Madison continued. "You said Claire wouldn't notice if I borrowed the sewing box." I had suspected it. Hearing it confessed was different. Denise had removed the key from my desk during the family dinner and hidden it for Madison. She had not intended for the gown to go to the party, but she had deliberately bypassed a lock because she believed my refusal would be unreasonable. Then, when the gown was destroyed, she had entered my home accusing me of valuing property over family. The entire disaster had grown from a belief they shared: my no did not count. The mediator looked at Denise. "You understand that your actions contributed directly to the loss?" Denise's mouth tightened. "I was trying to help my daughter build a business. By taking property without permission? It was sewing material from her aunt's house. It was Claire's property in Claire's home behind a locked door," the mediator said. No one had ever corrected Denise that plainly. I watched her face and realized she was not devastated by what she had done. She was devastated that her family status no longer overruled facts. We reached a settlement. Madison would pay $200 a month until she covered $2,400. Denise would pay $800, matching Uncle Raymond's contribution. If they missed 2 payments, I could enforce the full judgment. Outside the courthouse, Madison caught up with me near the metal detectors. "Are you happy now?" she asked. I turned. She looked smaller without a camera pointed at her. "No, you won. This was never something I could win." She stared at the folder in my arms. "You got money. I lost my mother's dress." For a moment, the anger left her face. Then Denise called her name from the hallway, and the moment closed. The first 3 payments arrived on time. The fourth was 8 days late. After my attorney sent a short reminder, the remaining payments resumed. Accountability was not dramatic. It looked like ordinary numbers entering an account month after month, each one a quiet refusal to let them redefine damage as inconvenience. I used every dollar for Marisol's work. 1 month before the wedding, my doorbell camera alerted me while I was editing a restaurant logo in my office. Madison stood on the porch with her hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a plain blue blouse. She held a shoebox in both hands. I did not open the door fully. I left the chain fastened. "What do you want?" "I brought something I found." "I don't want a gift." "It isn't a gift." She opened the box. Inside lay 9 pearls, a small piece of ivory lace, and the blue forget-me-not my mother had embroidered inside the hem. My throat closed. "Why do you have those?" Madison looked down. "They came off that night. The flower was stuck to the inside of my shoe. I put everything in my purse." "Why didn't you return them?" "At first I thought if I gave them to you, you'd have more proof I ruined it." "I already had proof." "I know." Rain had begun to tick against the porch railing. Madison shifted the box, but she did not cry loudly or reach for the old excuses. "Later, I kept them because they felt like leverage," she said. "I thought maybe you would let me come to the wedding if I returned them." The honesty was ugly, but it was honesty. "And now?" I asked. "Now I know using them to get something would be doing it again." I said nothing. She took a breath. "I wanted Tyler to notice me. I wanted everyone online to think I was fearless and funny. I used the one thing I knew. Made you feel close to Aunt Evelyn because I knew it would get attention. That wasn't an accident. It was selfish." The confession did not repair the gown. It did not return the months of stress or erase the sound of people laughing while she wore it. But for the first time, Madison named the act without shrinking it. "Did your mother tell you to come?" "She doesn't know I'm here." "Are you asking me to forgive you?" She shook her head. Tears gathered, but they fell quietly. "No. I kept wanting forgiveness because I thought it meant I wouldn't have to feel ashamed anymore. My counselor said that isn't what forgiveness is for." "You're seeing a counselor?" "Uncle Raymond helped me find one." I believed her, mostly because she did not ask me to congratulate her. "I can't forgive you so you can sleep peacefully," I said. "I don't know if I'll ever trust you again." Madison nodded. "I didn't come for that. I came to return what was still hers." I reached through the narrow opening created by the chain and took the shoebox. Our fingers did not touch. "Thank you for bringing it back," I said. Her face crumpled, not because I had welcomed her, but because I had not. "I hope your wedding is beautiful," she whispered. Then she walked down the steps into the rain. I closed the door, sat on the floor, and held those small pieces in my palms. I did not cry the way I had the night I found the gown. That grief had been sharp and helpless. This was different. It felt like finding a burned photograph and realizing a smile was still visible. Marisol answered on the second ring. "I found the flower," I said. She integrated it into the gown 3 weeks before the ceremony. She reinforced the edges with fine silk thread and placed it beneath the inner bodice, directly over my heart. The 9 returned pearls completed the crescent at my waist. At the final fitting, I stood on a platform surrounded by mirrors. The new gown had a clean square neckline, fitted sleeves ending at my wrists, and a skirt that moved without trying to imitate the original train. The old lace showed only at the inner edge of the collar. 14 covered buttons traveled down my back. When I turned, the pearls flashed like a small moon. Marisol adjusted one shoulder. "How does it feel?" I searched for the right word. "True," I said. "Not new. Not restored. True." On the morning of the wedding, sunlight filled the little glass chapel in Belmont. Dogwood branches moved outside the windows. We had 41 guests, including Grandma Ruth, Uncle Raymond, Kayla, Marisol, and 2 women from my grief support group. No one asked where Denise and Madison were. In the bridal room, Grandma helped close the original buttons. Her fingers were slower than they had been in 1993, but she remembered how each loop should sit. "Your mother would be making a terrible fuss about how beautiful you look," she said. I laughed and cried at the same time. Would she be mad that I changed the design? Grandma gave me a look. "Evelyn changed that design 4 times while we were making it. She would have wanted pockets." I slipped my hands into the pockets Marisol had added and laughed harder. Before we left the room, Grandma pinned a tiny photograph inside my bouquet. Mom was wearing the original gown outside the courthouse. Her eyes shone, and her mouth was open in a laugh that seemed to know nothing about death. I could not copy her dress. I could not repeat her photograph. I could not undo the rooftop or make the damaged silk unburn. But when the chapel doors opened, the old lace brushed my skin like a hand resting gently on my shoulder. Ethan waited at the end of the aisle in a navy suit. When he saw me, his face folded with emotion. I walked toward him on Grandma's arm while an acoustic guitar played the melody Mom used to sing while ironing. I did not think about Madison dancing beneath patio lights. I did not think about black glitter, the family group chat, or the phrase, "piece of fabric." I thought about Mom bent over the singer, Grandma passing her pearls, and both of them saving a gown for a daughter who did not yet know how much she would need it. During the vows, Ethan took my hands. "I promise never to ask you to make your pain smaller so I can feel bigger," he said. That was the line that broke me. After the ceremony, Grandma touched the crescent of pearls at my waist. Marisol stood beside her, crying openly. Uncle Raymond hugged me and apologized again for not seeing sooner what was happening in his own home. "You showed up when you understood," I told him. "That matters." We ate lemon cake beneath string lights in the chapel garden. There were no speeches about family unity. There was no empty chair staged as a message. The people who came did not spend the day discussing those who had not. Peace, I discovered, was not everyone agreeing. It was no longer organizing my life around the people committed to misunderstanding me. After the wedding, the pieces of the original gown that could not be used became 3 things. Marisol made a small handkerchief to keep with Mom's photographs, a ring pouch lined with salvaged silk, and a framed panel containing lace beside the courthouse picture. I hung the frame in the entryway of our house. Beneath it, I placed a simple line in my mother's handwriting, copied from a note in her recipe box: "Respect what is made with love." Denise took almost a year to write to me without blame. Her letter did not ask to attend a delayed reception or demand that I call. She admitted she had envied Mom for decades and had treated my inheritance as evidence of an old injustice. She wrote that moving the key had been theft, even if she had not wanted to call it that. She apologized for using Mom's name against me. I did not answer immediately. When I finally did, I wrote 4 sentences. I accepted the apology as an acknowledgment of truth. I told her trust would require consistent behavior over time. I said she could send letters but could not visit without an invitation. I wished her well. Madison never lived with me again. We did not become close. Twice a year, she mailed a short note. The first said she had completed every settlement payment. The second said she had begun working at a non-profit resale shop that funded housing for women leaving abusive homes. She did not frame the job as redemption. She simply told me what she was doing. 3 years after the wedding, Grandma Ruth died peacefully in her sleep at 85. At her funeral, Madison stood across the church foyer. She waited until I approached rather than forcing a conversation. "I'm sorry," she said. This time, the words carried no request behind them. I let her hug me for 2 seconds. Then we stepped apart. Forgiveness, if that was the beginning of it, did not look like reopening my house or pretending the rooftop never happened. It looked like being able to see her without needing her to suffer. Trust remained somewhere farther away, and I no longer believed I owed anyone a map to it. The restored gown now rests in a new preservation box in the same closet, behind a new lock. I do not keep it there because I am afraid to let it live. I wore it. I danced in it. I spilled a drop of champagne near the hem and laughed before Marisol dabbed it clean. The gown is not a shrine. It is evidence that damage and dignity can exist in the same object. Sometimes I open the box and touch the inner collar. I feel the ridge of the blue flower beneath the lining. I remember the worst night, but I also remember Ethan collecting pearls from the floor, Grandma striking her cane against the hardwood, Marisol telling the truth gently. And the moment the chapel doors opened. For years, I believed protecting a memory meant keeping it untouched. I know better now. Sometimes protecting what you love means refusing to let other people rename its destruction. Sometimes it means collecting the pieces, making boundaries where doors used to stand open, and allowing skilled hands to sew history into a shape that can move forward. My mother left me a house, a sewing machine, a wedding gown, and a way of loving people generously. Madison and Denise taught me the part Mom had never learned: generosity without a boundary eventually becomes permission. I still love my family. I simply no longer use love as an excuse to abandon myself. And whenever sunlight catches the little crescent of pearls in our wedding photograph, I do not see a ruined dress. I see every hand that helped me carry it home.